Not work, walking around the office to deal with remote call.
Hello. Good. Go ahead and call the meeting, the special meeting of the Lakeshore Hospital Authority Board of Trustees to order. Are there any staff or trustee additions or deletions to the agenda?
Staff has no additions or deletions, Mr. Chairman.
I'll entertain a motion for the adoption of the agenda.
I so move to adopt tonight's agenda, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. The motion carries. And we'll move to public comments. Just a couple things on public comments. If you're called in on the Zoom meeting, if you hit *9, that will allow you to raise your hand on the Zoom program. And then once you're called upon, *6 will unmute yourself. Whether you're on in person or called into the meeting on Zoom, we're limiting tonight's comments, as we do every meeting, to 3 minutes. And those 3 minutes are 3 minutes. Nobody will get additional time. After the 3 minutes, you'll be asked to wrap up your comments, and the microphone will be cut off if you continue. It is a public comment time, not a question and answer time. If you ask a question and somebody on the dais feels led to answer that, that answer will go towards your 3 minute time limit. So far, I've got two. If you had a comment that you want to make tonight, make sure that you fill out a public comment form in the back and bring that up to me. So Ms. Shavella Young.
Good evening. I'm Shavella Young. Do I need to state my address? I am Shavella Young, and I am City Council District 10. So I'm not here really speaking, excuse my allergies, for Shavella Young. Can you hear me better? Okay, my name is Shavella Young, City Council District 10. And I'm here really speaking on behalf of City Council District 10. I did attend the meeting on last week, and I heard all of the great things about this Meridian happening in Lakeshore Hospital. And I didn't say have any questions or anything. I actually wanted to hear what the panel had to say. And afterwards, I've gone and talking to members in the community and also business owners, some in the community, who I thought would that their thoughts on this would be very imperative to what's happening here. And I spoke with some in favor. There were a few not in favor, but there is one concern that I do have, is that during the presentation, there was a information given as to Florida Gateway College, and that Dr. Barrett called and showed an interest. And of course, that really made a big difference in what I thought of this happening at Lakeshore. But I made a phone call to Dr. Barrett because, like I said, his decision to me is very valuable, especially with what was presented that will happen in this project. And I think it's either misunderstanding or something, but it changes the whole ordeal of the presentation. He's not saying which way he's going, yay or nay. He's not saying whether he's supporting or whether he's not supporting. And to me, that's a big deal. Because this is one of the great values that lies within this Meridian project being held at Lakeshore Hospital. So I'm hoping it was miscommunication and not misleading. But back to the business owners, some of them did not know of this happening. And I don't know why, but I'm glad I was able to visit most of them. I didn't get a lot of them. And do I finish my sentence? And I was going with the project, but I have to say that I'm not solely on behalf of District 10 with the project. And that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Gill. Ms. Limley?
Barbara Limley. The reason I'm here in support of Meridian. And I do hope all the board members as trustees remember the oath you took to be good stewards of the finances. The hospital situation has been kicked down the road for 2.5 years. I know Chairman Beal's ready to get it done. And I disagree or do not coincide or believe that the entire hospital is under reverter clause. The only section that I found that would revert back to the Lake City Lodge Freemasons would be the parking lot where staff of the old hospital and employees parked. That was the only reverter clause I saw. There was property that was donated from the city to the Lake City Hospital Corporation. And I do think all trustees should go with this. Mental health is a major concern. And we've got a willing vendor to take the hospital building with no strings attached. Ms. Young had mentioned the college. The college wants money to do it. And Dr. Baird had said, and that you guys would remember, that the state would rather give money for new construction. Plus, it would take at least a year and a half. And the hospital authority would be again spending $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a month. And I hope that you guys go to the bottom of your heart and think what is best for the property, regardless of what District 10 says. You know, they're going to have 24/7 security, and drugs aren't going to be dispensed, despite what one of the community activists said. I think this is a very needed project. And I will ask Director Williams, you said it taken to my time about the reverter clause. Could you explain that further?
The original 1955 deed from the local Masonic Lodge was given, or property was deeded to what was then Lakeshore Corporation. That particular deed did have a reverter and a restriction. The reverter required the property to be reverted back to the Masonic Lodge if certain conditions were not met. The restriction required that if the property were sold, the proceeds should be returned to the Masonic Lodge. As far as where that is legally, all of that has been transferred to Authority Legal Counsel. It's not finished. It is currently under review. I think we're way too early to say exactly what it says or doesn't say, but it is under advisement and it is being looked at.
Well, the deed specifies block 111, and that's pretty specific as to what it is, and that's the parking lot.
Well, I can tell you, just for the record, that we did ask the local property appraiser to delineate the property that was inclusive by the deed. They would argue that it is more extensive than the parking lot, but that is not for me to decide. Those are matters of legal. We'll let the attorneys worry about that.
Mr. Bowden?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and board members, Glenn L. Bowden. I just wanted to come up and add my voice as one to oppose the location of Meridian at Lake Shore property. Not because I'm opposed to mental health services or none of that. I just think it's a bad location. I was not convinced at the last meeting where Meridian did a presentation that they're necessarily going to be a good steward. I don't see where it's add any value to the immediate neighborhood. You know, I was born and raised in North Lake City. The only place I ever lived in Lake City been north of the railroad track. And all I see is a power plant. I see a junkyard, and I see a mental health facility that I'm not convinced that's going to be a good steward or a good neighbor to the community. I'm surprised really that there are business owners downtown that talk in private about they don't think it's a good idea, but they're not willing to come down here and voice their opinion. That's kind of concerning to me. So, but I wanted to say that I'm personally opposed to the location of the facility, not Meridian Services. I just don't see them as being they didn't convince me that they're going to be a good neighbor, so to speak. And I would hope if you all decide to go that route, that Meridian will be more than just an employer, but it will become a part of the community. What I mean by that, get involved in the community itself. Don't just come to work and go home. Don't come to work and go home. Actually be a part of the community. And they should understand what the condition of the neighborhood immediately around Meridian. You know, I'm concerned that you got a walking path there. People walk around the lake every day. Children walk around the lake every day. I don't know how secure it's going to be, but I don't have good feelings. And I want to be on the record that I personally do oppose that location of Meridian. The other question, I guess this is the question. Is this going to be deeded to them or are they going to buy it? I think they're not a non-profit. They're not a 501(c)(3). They're for profit. So how are they going to acquire this? If we're going to just give the property to them, that's taxpayers. It belongs to the taxpayers. So I guess that's a question. How is that transition going to take place if you decide to do it?
Glenelle, I think the best way to answer your question is this way. We don't know the answer to that yet. They have requested that if we're able to work out an arrangement that the property be deeded to them. There are some legal issues with that, which is the purpose of the conversation earlier about the reverter. I really think what we're trying to achieve tonight is Meridian in their presentation made a statement. And in that statement, they said they wanted the opportunity to sit and see if there couldn't be an arrangement worked out where they could use the hospital for specific purposes. That may or may not include the transfer of the property. That is going to require, pay grade above me before all of that can be determined. But if there's no interest at all in working with Meridian, there is no need to go through the trouble, the steps, the time that would be involved to sit and try to negotiate some form of arrangement. So I think what the trustees are trying to do is to come to a consensus. And if there is a consensus that they could allow Meridian, or they would accept Meridian as a tenant, user, owner of that building, then we'll sit down and see what we can work out within the framework of the law, Meridian's needs, and the needs of the authority.
Thank you, Darren.
Mr. Bowden? Ms. George?
Good evening. Basically, most of the people that are for Meridian don't live in the community. They are gonna come to the community and go back home. They're not there with the power plants, the railroad tracks, the junkyard, and then what we're gonna have is a problem. We already have increasing crime levels. Then you're gonna bring this element to the community. They're gonna kill the business community that y'all are finally trying to get to thrive downtown, the pavilion, You know, we rented the pavilion several times. You already got them across at the little mini pavilion, sleeping and chilling. And then you trying to have something that, hey, can I get a plate? Can I do this? You have a lot of issues that y'all are not taking into account. And she came up and said, what's best for the property? Property is never gonna be over people. You put people over property. When we should never be in the business of putting a piece of property over people. You know, you have the pattern, you have the lake, somebody mentioned people walking around the lake. People are not gonna feel comfortable. You're trying to build back the downtown community, and what you're gonna do is destroy the downtown community. We already have several people already downtown. You stop at a red light, you're getting harassed. We don't need to add more, and that's what's gonna happen with Meridian. It's needed, but not for this community, not for the community where Lake Shore is located. And as I said, I want to reiterate, most of the people who are coming up here and saying, yeah, go Meridian, don't live here. They're not going to have to deal with it. You're not going to be at the funeral home, Cole's funeral home, trying to grieve and somebody coming up asking you for money and doing this kind of stuff. We already have those issues. We don't need to compound those issues with Meridian. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. George. Mr. Looker.
Thank you very much. Stu Wilker. I have been following Columbia County Observer, following the Lakeshore Hospital Authority since 2006. However, tonight I'm just here as a taxpayer and an observer of the authority. I would respectfully point out to this board that the governor has, 2 years now? Mr. Robinson to fill up the board, and he hasn't done it. I submit to you, the governor knows this board is not legally constituted. He's a smart guy. Went to Yale, went to Harvard, he knows the law. And this is just an illegally constituted board, which is why you don't have a full board. But I'm not here to talk about, really you guys, I'm here to talk about mental health. What's mental health? It appears the word psychiatry has got everybody on edge. Well, if anybody read my story about Marion County, you had 2 young firefighters within 3 weeks committed suicide because they had nobody to talk to. The chief got on and went viral throughout America and begging people to be able to listen to people. That's what psychiatry and mental health is about. If you ride your bicycle and you fall down and you break your leg and you break your arm, you got your bone coming through the skin, you go, holy smokes. I would probably say something a little different. I better go see the doctor. But somehow mental health and psychiatry became a dirty word, and it's still a dirty word. You'd think maybe we would have grown up when everybody came back from the battlefields of World War I with shell shock and the lives that destroyed, but people only paid attention a little bit. Then we had World War II. People only paid a little attention a little bit. Then we have PTSD from the days of Vietnam. Some of us remember those days. I was sitting on H-bombs during that time, and other people were overseas. They wouldn't send me, but I volunteered. But that's neither here nor there. PTSD then became real. And that's mental health. Psychiatry is not a dirty word. Mental health is not a dirty word. And if nobody's ever had it, I suggest you get some psychoanalysis. It might wake you up about why you're against something as important as Meridian filling up the hospital, a once in a lifetime chance for this community and for everybody else. Mental health is only not about drugs. It's become that. It's about people that need help. And when this board thinks about that, Ms. Chancey and Mr. Douglas and the rest of the board, think about those 2 young men who left wives and between them 2 children each because they had nobody to talk to. And they were he-men or whatever they were and had no place to go, that if they could have gotten their car and driven to a community health center like Meridian, they may thank you. They may still be alive. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Looker. Mr. Candler.
Good evening, board members. I, like everybody else that's coming up here, am in no way opposed to mental health and mental health facilities. Have family, have friends that have needed those kinds of services, and I feel like that is an absolute need in our community. I, like a lot of everybody else that is up here opposing the project or the location of the project, is simply because of the location. Right now, I have two brief points. We have a very burgeoning central business district in Lake City right now. We have a lot of projects. We have a lot of businesses. We have festivals that are coming to town. We have family movie nights down in the Darby. I'm not here to tell you that what the folks from Meridian, even if I'm going to come at it from maybe a slightly different perspective. They could run the perfect project and they can deliver absolutely everything that they say. And I don't doubt that they will. The problem is going to come in stigma. There is going to be a stigma associated with that. I have dealt in the business community and the real estate community for 25 or 30 years, and stigma is real. Perception is reality. And my fear, my worry, is that by placing a facility of this type in the downtown community, one where we are finally kind of regrouping after COVID, that stigma may just stymie that potential once again. Not because of anything that they've done wrong, just because of what people believe. And again, I'm all for it, 100%. But that stigma could have a real impact on my business, on the community surrounding it, and on the city of Lake City. Second question that I've got is, and I know that Mr. Williams, I know that this is going to possibly be hashed out long term, but I just wanted to make sure it got brought up. If this was a negotiation in between say like the county and a private corporation, there would be benchmarks that would be in place. One of the other worries that I have is, what if Meridian can't, for some reason, deliver on their promises? What happens if there are problems? What happens if they can't finish their construction? Then we're left with a problem where, in the county situation where they offer incentives or they give a building or they abate property taxes, all of that stuff, now there are benchmarks. If you don't meet those 200 employees, okay, you're giving those property taxes back, or you're giving that building back. I want to make sure that if we enter into negotiations with Meridian, that there are similar benchmarks, that we structure this like a true economic development opportunity or a true economic development project, where if they can't meet their obligations, the obligations that are lined out up front, that there are ramifications. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Candler. Carl, were there any commenters online? If there's any attendees online, again, *9, or if you're on the Zoom application, you can hit raise your hand. Here, none, will close the public comments. Mr. Williams, there was no unfinished business from the workshop. Is that correct?
No, Mr. Chairman, the workshop concluded within the time frame of the January 31st, 2003 special workshop. I will state that this is a special meeting. It was advertised. It meets the requirements for a special meeting. It is limited to the discussion and possible action concerning Meridian Behavioral Health Care's proposal, and that is the only issue that can be discussed at tonight's special meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. And as Dale mentioned earlier, tonight, really, I think what tonight needs to be about is, is this board ready to move forward with this proposal from Meridian? We don't have to hash out the specifics of the deal, whether it be giving property or leasing property or anything like that. I really think that tonight's meeting really needs to be focused on, are we moving forward with this, and in what manner are we going to move forward with this? We can have authority staff and Meridian get together and negotiate anything that needs to be negotiated. After that, we have a meeting in 6 days, not saying that it'll be done by then, but we do have another meeting coming up next week, so. With that, we'll move on to the new business, the discussion and possible action, the donation of the Lakeshore Hospital building to Meridian Behavioral Health Care. And I would open the floor for discussion or a motion. Yeah, this was the one thing that was publicized that the meeting is going to be about. We had public comments, so SB. Right. Okay. So we've got everybody's comments tonight. So we're not going to have any more. Okay. Thank you.
Want me to go ahead?
Yes.
Yeah, you go first. Mom.
I'll be more than happy to. Where do I start? Been on this board for 14 months now. And I think this board has had more special meetings in the 14 months than in the history of the board. And I too am tired of kicking the can down the road. A decision has to be made. To my fellow residents, District 10 residents, Columbia County residents, Lake City residents, Gainesville residents, Meridian. I am retired and have been for 10 years happily. But last week I walked the streets of Marion Street, talking to business owners, property owners, talking to them individually about their wants, their needs, and their desires for the community. And I've heard and listened intently to each one of your comments tonight, and I take that very serious. There are issues to the downtown area, and why something hadn't been done and it's been ignored, I have no idea. It wouldn't pay for me to be in Councilwoman Miss Young's seat, and I appreciate talking to you last Thursday. I did talk to her. Is she even here or did she leave? She left. I talked to her last Thursday afternoon on the phone. Councilman Jernigan, I spoke to him at great length. I've spoke to every elected official at the city. I've spoke to almost every elected official in the county. I've spoke to administrative staff in the county and in the city. And I have found yet anyone who is opposed to the concept that Meridian has proposed. I too agree with each and every one of you, Mr. Candler. I agree with you that we need to have teeth put into any type of agreement before it is settled upon with Meridian. I've spoke to every law enforcement officer in the city and the county. Not everyone, but the majority of them that I have known over the years, including the chief, including the sheriff. I've spoke to the county individuals. Mr. Williams has done public records requests for both of those agencies, not just here in Columbia County, but also in Alachua County, to both the facility on Michigan Street and the facility in Gainesville. I've looked at them, examined them. They probably make more calls to my house than they have both of those facilities. What I would like to do is hear from my colleagues to see what they have talked to, who they have talked to, and what input that they have had. I've talked to judicial officials here, not just in Columbia County, but also in the Third Circuit, who I've worked with so closely. Members of the clergy. I have talked to them here, not just in the white section, but in the black section too. I have talked to property owners, business owners in the black community, and got their input and their feedback. There's several business owners in District 10. There's several a lot of good property owners in District 10. I'm not going to throw names out, but I think you all know that I have talked to people until I'm blue in the face. And I would like to hear from my other colleagues before I make any type of motion.
Thank you, John. I'll try and follow that. I, like you, I have had a myriad of phone calls over the last 2 weeks. I have talked to everyone I can think of until I am blue in the face. I've gone so far as contacting landowners in what I would consider to be possible alternate locations. Who've said they're open for discussions. I've talked with the folks over at Meridian about that. You know, I haven't hit what I would say is a complete brick wall, but a pretty good one. I can tell you that if I was to give you a summary of what I have heard, the summary is the same thing. We have a location problem. We don't have the mission of Meridian is not a problem. And I think it is very, very difficult to have what I would call gotta be careful how I say that, a personal testimony that I have lived within a stone's throw of Meridian over in Gainesville. I took my dog to the park next to Meridian not less than 70 some odd times, parking in the Meridian parking lot, having no idea that I was parked next to Meridian's headquarters. Didn't know. So the tour of Meridian, the facility, the grounds there, a lot of the concerns that I hear, I don't know that they're necessarily founded, if you will. The only concern that I continually hear that does give me pause is the stigma. The stigma attached to this is it cannot be discounted about that. I wish I could convey my experience to the people that were on the phone with me, but I can tell you that the phone calls, the texts, I've gotten them all. And I can't tell you that many of them were terribly positive. And I've been busy. I've been calling the people, the brains that I know and trust. I mean, like I said, I got on the horn trying to find the third way. You know, what do we do? Find some dirt where I think that no one would oppose a facility of this type. And I actually, you know, I got a very warm response about that. The trick would be is I was about, and what we could find, I was in the tens of millions short for what it would need to kind of push that ball forward. So that's what my latest has found me. The concern that I have was the stigma involved in it. You can pose that question however you want. That stigma is a very real stigma, and it is attached. I know it was attached because it was attached in my mind until I went and educated myself. And so here we are with people bringing very real concerns about, well, what's it going to look like if we're trying to grow the downtown area? And we have a Meridian Health facility over here that is an inpatient psychiatric ward. There is a stigma attached to that. I know because I suffered from it at one point in time. I think I made that very clear. And after I toured the facility and realized that I was next to one of those facilities very few days, a little bit of embarrassment got to me, but at the same time, how do I convey that experience on a mass scale? How do I keep that from affecting downtown? I don't know that I got an answer for that one just yet. But those are my thoughts for right now. I'd like to continue this discussion, by the way, if we could.
I understand the stigma that you're talking about. I can remember in the 1950s when if there was any hospital to do with psychiatric patients, it was put miles and miles away from anything. I think we've grown in our understanding of the fact that people need help. Unfortunately, it took the Vietnam War for us to really get hot to trot on it. I personally would rather see a good psychiatric hospital, even if it's in the middle of downtown Lake City, then I would just an open field, because that's what we'll have. In fact, the land will revert, because that's what the law reads from what I can get. I believe that a secured psychiatric hospital, which is what we were told would be at the last meeting, am I correct? A secured hospital where the family of the people that are in that hospital can come to visit them would help Lake City. The increase in the number of the workforce in Lake City would help the people of Lake City that have businesses. Beyond that, I look at our police officers. Rather than having to transport someone a great distance that has a psychiatric problem, their safety is much better if they transport a short distance. Then you can take into account for every time we have a police officer take someone down to Gainesville, that's at the cost of the citizens of Columbia County. Now, as a wife and a mother, I understand the fears. I really do. But I cannot live in fear any more than any of you can. We need to accept things that are needed. We tell our kids that. And that's how I live. And that's how I feel.
My experience has been very similar to everybody else's. I've probably had more positive feedback from members of the community than I have negative. I've heard from multiple elected officials that said they would love it if they could create 98 new jobs this easily. To Stephen, to a couple of your points, the alternate locations, sure, that sounds great, but there's not a 4-story, however many 100,000 square foot building that's there. I mean, if we could,
Another 30 million.
right. So I don't think, I'm certain Meridian didn't look at a map and say, this is where we want to be. We want to go right here in this building. Meridian saw an opportunity because there's a vacant hospital building and they have a need for that space. That Alachua facility, Stephen, that you spoke about, that you went to the park and walked your dog. You know, you went past the part of the park where there were kids playing and other, you know, it's a regular park, community park that's right next to that facility. And that facility has outpatient treatments there, the methadone clinic. And even with those services, it's still a very clean and pleasant campus. And I hate to admit that I was shocked. I hate to admit that I was shocked at that, because that stigma was in my mind as well. One thing is we have to remember that we were appointed by the governor to manage the funds of the Lakeshore Hospital Authority. We weren't elected and probably will not be after tonight. But we're spending $50,000 a month to maintain a building. And if we decide that we're not going to give this building or come to some sort of agreement with Meridian, we're gonna spend upwards of $3 million or more to demolish a building, and we're gonna use taxpayer dollars to do that. It's our responsibility to manage those taxpayer dollars wisely. I do agree that I like the idea of having the benchmarks. I think that's very smart. If this moves forward, I think that that's something that we should discuss whenever, during negotiations of the agreement. But I've heard both positive and negative. I think everybody has said that I've spoken to said there is a need. The only concern that I've heard is the location of the facility.
If I may add, Stephen, to your concerns about stigma perception. Yes, that is hard to overcome. And I've been fighting it all my life. My former boss back there, Dennis Roberts, the elected public defender, a lawyer, Mr. Robinson sitting here, a lawyer. But all my life, when I talk to people and ask them, did you have a lawyer or a public defender? They all would say I had a public defender, or they would say I had a real lawyer. That's perception, that's stigma that people have got to overcome. What I would like to do is I would like to make a motion, and I would like to direct my attention to my fellow colleagues to the very last page of the Meridian at Lakeshore proposal. If you could please follow me on the very last page. The very last paragraph of that proposal. Please let me know when you have it. It was up on their PowerPoint. I wish I had it again tonight to bring it up. Oh, I do. Okay. Wow. Boy, the staff is phenomenal. It's the very last page of their proposal. Keep going.
Right there.
There you go. Very last paragraph. I would like to make a motion that we ask our staff, consisting of Mr. Williams, Miss Markham, Miss Watson, Mr. Powell, Mr. Robinson, or Mr. Kennan, whichever one, to give them the opportunity to sit down and develop a mutually agreeable and supportive agreement that collectively will provide for the citizens of Columbia County for the foreseeable future. I'd like to make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Motion
I'll second.
in a second. Any further discussion?
Yes, on the discussion, I would like to ask that each of us as board members, please give Mr. Williams the opportunity, and I would also, even though this is not part of the motion, but I'd like to discuss it, that we hopefully try to resolve something by our April meeting, which is just 6 weeks away and 8 weeks away. Yeah, because we got a regular meeting next Monday. I forgot about that one. So 8 weeks away. And between now and then, that each of us meet with Mr. Williams and make your concerns known to Mr. Williams as to what you would like to see as far as teeth into any type of agreement proposal, which either we can agree to or Meridian can disagree to, and to resolve this issue, at least with Meridian, and then we can move further after that, Mr. Chairman.
Any other discussion?
Is Dale gonna talk now or are we waiting? Or is he gonna discussion?
I don't know.
I didn't know if he was. Sorry. No, if you have.
Got a motion and a second. There's no further discussion. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Take roll.
A
We'll do
little
it.
bit more discussion. Is that possible?
Sure.
I have a couple more questions.
Go ahead, Mr. Douglas.
We can't. We still have it up in the air. Do we not still have it up in the air that we don't have the ability to convey this property? I mean, is that still an unknown? I mean,
I think that would probably come out in
is that
this
part of the
motion is for them
discussion
to sit down and
Yes,
develop a
through the
mutually.
legal part of it. Yes. And I have some concerns about that too, Mr. Douglas.
that's why I'm just a little hesitant to just rush straight into this motion. And that's the only reason is I sit there and I think about that reverter clause. And I'm like, well, we go and green light this entire thing. Everybody says we're cavalier, we're ready to go. And then we have a reverter clause that slaps us in the face.
I think if you'll read that motion again, all I'm doing is asking for our staff to sit down with their staff and put all the cards on the table, including that, through Mr. Kennon and Mr. Robinson. Everything. And get it resolved. They may not be able to do it by April. They may have to do it in May. I just threw the April date, and that's not part of the motion. I did that just as discussion. We're still gonna have to come back and vote on the agreement if there is one.
Gotcha.
Any other questions? We'll do a roll call vote. No,
I
I'm
don't
sorry. Go ahead,
have-
Ms.
I
Chancey.
don't have a question.
Okay.
Okay. You're giving them 8 weeks to figure all this out?
Or more if they need it. That's
It's not in
between,
the motion. That was his,
right,
after the motion, the discussion was he would like for it to come back by. April.
yes,
Okay,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I thought it was.
All right, so we've got a motion and a second. Motion by Mr. Kennedy, second by Ms. Chancey. Mr. Kennedy,
Yes,
Ms. Chancey,
Yes,
Mr. Douglas,
Yes.
motion passes unanimously. Any board member comments, Mr. Douglas?
No.
Ms. Chancey?
I think all are aware of what my feelings are about retaining the land and not getting into any type of litigation, which will ensue if we try and give it away. So other than that, that's my concern.
Mr. Kennedy?
yes, I just would like to add that everybody in this room, I have the same concerns that you do. I've lived in this community for 48 years and I love it. And I don't want to do anything and I don't want to see anything done to hurt this community. You can take that to the bank.
And we have exhausted the agenda for tonight, so we'll adjourn the meeting.